Patch 4.6.0 has arrived. With another week, unfortunately, comes another nerf. Now, some of these adjustments are appropriate and I'll get to that later, but we have come to a crossroads where we have to ask ourselves if these nerfs have become way too abundant, to the point that they are risking how good these weapons feel to use, which is one of the biggest contributing factors towards what made the finals so alluring. But before we get into that, if you enjoy these sort of videos, please smash that like button and also subscribe for all things the finals. Let's get back to it. So there are some aspects that I appreciated in this patch, such as the performance fixes, which is much needed no matter the amount, and I also think decreasing the range of the healing beam is very appropriate. However, the adjustments for the weapons is a little bit concerning to me. When looking at the pike, we obviously know that it is quite strong, and that this adjustment was more than likely coming because it was stated in previous patches. However, I was really hoping that instead of bringing down a weapon and affecting its feel, they would buff other weapons and rely on counters as a way of bringing the pike back in line, by buffing other weapons that are close to its effective ranges or able to provide suppressive fire, such as the XP54, FCAR, AKM, Lewis gun, and M60. These buffs don't even have to be major, they can be very slight and monitored on a weekly to bi-weekly basis until the sandbox feels just right. Because what happens when a weapon is nerfed? The majority of players will always gravitate to the next best thing, which is the scoped FAMAS. This weapon could already easily counter the pike at close ranges, and even with the adjustments being very slight, this will give the scoped FAMAS even more room for error to dominate within 30 meters. There might even be an argument here saying the pike is way too oppressive at far ranges, and yes, there's no doubting that, but if you really think about it though, there are only a few cash out locations that are out in the open where the pike is an oppressive force, such as the variant in Monaco where the church is destroyed, in the far corner of Cis Horizon, and the structure that is surrounded by water in Kyoto. For most cash out locations though, there is a way to close the gap. And one might say there is an option of creating artificial distance by blowing holes through the roof and standing 1 to 2 floors above. However, that still won't exceed a 30-meter distance, allowing the FAMAS to still dominate. Now, after playing for a few hours since the patch released, I can somewhat confidently say I'm having no issues eliminating or suppressing a pike user within 50 meters. Now, I'm not saying that the pike is utterly useless because it's still quite effective. However, I can guarantee you are going to see the same complaints that the pike had for the FAMAS, especially on Reddit, potentially putting it on the nerf chopping block, thus allowing this vicious cycle to continue. Now, in the case of the sword, I can completely understand how this nerf came to be. It is very hard to counter an experienced sword main with dash, especially if you're on console. But here lies my point. It wasn't necessarily the sword by itself that was strong, it was the combination with dash that effectively increased its range. And 1 meter less, in my humble opinion, is not going to make a difference at all. Just like the pike, I still believe we should have adjusted this by slightly decreasing the TTK of weapons that are able to counter it. This would have kept the sword mains happy and the skill ceiling of this weapon high, truly making it a high risk, high reward weapon, rewarding those for putting in the time of mastering it, rather than handicapping them. And although the number of sword users have increased, they still pale in comparison to the amount of lights using the M11. Well, at least in the lobbies that I'm in. Now, when it comes to the incendiary grenade, at face value, this buff is really good. And I would go as far to say it would have been great if the mesh and dome shield wasn't nerfed as hard. Because in my opinion, there are already effective counters such as the glitch grenade, glitch canisters, glitch mine to preemptively stop them from activating it, sheer damage, and as for the dome shield, time itself. So in other words, this buff was effectively another indirect nerf to heavy. What I would have loved to see was a slight buff to both the mesh and dome shield to complement the adjustment to the incendiary grenade. I can definitely understand the reasoning behind giving the grenade more utility. However, this hurts heavy more than anything. Anyhow, to leave this patch on a positive note, for those of you chads that do main the riot shield, they fixed an issue where it could catch on fire. And that pretty much sums things up. There are a few more tidbits that you guys can go check out yourself. I left the link in the description, but this was the info that stuck out the most to me. Regardless though, as many hours I put in after the patch was released, I'm going to say this again, this is an early impression, and it could be subject to change as the days go on. For now though, this patch in my opinion was not one of Embark's best, and I really hope that they don't stray too far away from the feel of the weapons that we've grown to know and love, by continuing to dull them with nerf after nerf. Listen, it sucks for me to make a video like this, because I want to continue praising Embark for the amazing job that they're doing as a whole, but this is just constructive criticism from a player that truly loves this game. Anyhow guys, that's all I have for you today. I'm going to get started working on these counter guides for the newer players, and as well as upcoming master classes. So stay tuned and subscribe for that. Peace and love, and I'll see you in the arena.